Nice.
Hello, and welcome to the Career Changers, the show that shares the most inspirational career change stories with the world. I'm your host, Elisa Martinez, and today we are going to talk about career change with Eric Bedell. I hope it's the right pronunciation.
It's great.
holistic, holistic personal development coach. Eric has experienced a string of career changes, going from world-class music venue manager, special education personal aide, run a vegan juice cafe, and full-time personal trainer, and more. So today, Eric is going to share his life experience and wisdom so that you can get a glimpse of who you could become. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
It's great. We are here, the Career Changers, and we are curious to know how did you start your professional life, or better, what was your first job?
It's a good question. Okay, where to start? My first, well, actually, I'll attack this from two angles. My first job ever, I was an umpire for kids Little League baseball. That was my first job ever. I was probably 12 years old. Actually, maybe I was 14 because it was right before you could legally work in New York. And I needed to pick up extra money, and I knew the people that ran the organization. So that was it. I was, Little League umpire. And I think what's interesting and why I was like I was so attracted to your show and what you do, because my life is literally this breadcrumb trail of a ton of different jobs, and it's led me to where I am now. And I think what's beautiful about that is I also know that I will go elsewhere, and I'll take bits and pieces of everything, just like I have along the way, to keep going. But so, yeah, I don't know. Let's see. How did I get started on the professional track that I'm on now as a career, well, not a career coach, but a holistic personal development coach? I think it probably stems from my undergraduate degrees in psychology and sociology. And I got out of school and I started working in special education and the public school system, and just always been I've just been literally obsessed with learning more about what makes people do what they do, what motivates them, what drives them, why we make choices we make, how we can make other choices. So I think everything I've done has been an extension of that, and it's been represented in jobs I've held in one way or another. And being a coach I can definitely say it's been the most amazing experience, because it allows me to bring all of these parts of myself together. And so it's like this really unifying moment of being a coach and working with people, and offering that idea to them that every part of their past is really useful. And in the perfect introduction you said of like who you could become, is really important. The first step is that I think is really important. Maybe it's not the first step, but it's part of the process, is integrating who you have been. Because otherwise getting where you'd like to go is going to be very top heavy, and you won't have the foundation you need. So I don't know, hopefully that answers the first part.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard of the word multipotentiality and multipotentiality to define people that instead of being focused only on one career, they have many interests. And I think, we covered this topic in the Career Changers. And when I read a little bit your stories, I thought, oh, Eric is a multipotentiality. And I think that is quite interesting, because there is this idea that we have to, we study, then we're gonna get a career or a job, and that's it, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But all the stories that we have on the Career Changes, they actually show that people, they develop different interests, And I think it's very natural in life. Otherwise, it could be very boring.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was your dream job when you were a child, if you had one?
Mm. Oh, that's a good question. Um, it changed many times. I don't think I ever had the sort of storybook childhood dream of like, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be a doctor. I think if I'm being honest, the first time I remember really having a target that I was like, that's what I want to do, was being a musician. And and I think what's really amazing is right, there's so many ways to scale your success or whatever, how much you fulfilled that goal. But I've done a lot of things in the music world that that make me feel like I did achieve that childhood dream goal to a certain degree. And I'm not done. Like, I have plenty more music that I want to write and release and play live. And um I think that's probably it. Yeah, because that's the first one that stands out to me. That was like, yes, I want to play drums. I want to be in front of people. Um, yeah, I want to travel the world, and yeah, that shaped a lot of my childhood too.
So before talking about who we could become with you, that is the hot
Mm.
topic of this interview, we're going to dig a little bit into your career change. So you say you had many experiences in your professional life. You also been a musician. You just mentioned. So how and when did you start thinking about becoming an holistic coach?
Um, I never considered it before I was in the darkest period of my life. And I think that's, I think probably a lot of people that have been on the Career Changers podcast might share a similar sort of jumping off point. Also, I apologize for the sirens. There's normal Brooklyn stuff. I don't know how much you can hear that, but
I
okay.
can't hear them at
Okay,
all.
good.
But it makes everything sound so cool because you're in Brooklyn, I'm in London. That's amazing.
It's so good. Oh, yeah, I think what I was saying is just that I think most people find that they're the biggest step forward, the biggest inspiration tends to come out of the darkest periods of their life. And it may not happen immediately. It may take a little bit of time to gain that space and distance and ability to reflect on what is possible from it. But for me, it was almost instantaneous. I was with my partner of 11, a little over 11 and a half years. We've been married for just over 2 of that. And she came out as gay. And it really forced me to um, figure out who the hell I actually was without her. What my interests were, why I was living the way I was, all of these things it really just pulled the rug out from under me. And I had to sort of take a lot of steps back and figure out, well, how do I go forward now? I don't even know where to aim because I'm not sure who I am. And that was like really, I mean, I'm talking about it in a pretty lighthearted way, but it was terrible. It was super dark. And I think what's really amazing is that out of it, I rekindled a friendship um, with a childhood buddy, like someone I met in kindergarten, like age 4, 5. We like had lost each other. And he's a therapist and a coach, and he recommended some coaching resources to me. And I just noticed the changes in how I was viewing my life, like dramatically, like instantaneously changing my outlook. And so I was like, this is helping me so much. my life has always been about how do I help other people. I went to school for psychology. It just clicked. And I was like, I'm going to become a coach. And I remember I signed up, I was taking my first coach training on the floor because we already sold the couch in our living room. I had been sleeping on the couch for about 3 months. My ex-wife was in the bedroom. I was on the couch, and now I was on the floor in a sleeping bag for the remainder of the time I was there. And I'm taking this course at 5 a.m. because it's an international course. It's really crazy to reflect on, but that was it. I got involved because of how much what it offered to me. I wanted to return that.
Well, that's quite a story, I would
Yeah,
say.
sorry.
No, it's really interesting. Nothing to be sorry about.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the story itself, you mentioned some of the challenges you had to transition, but I guess more personal challenges. Were there other challenges that did you have to overcome to transition career?
Definitely. Yeah. It's a good question. Um, at the time that I was going through this, I was managing that music venue that you mentioned in the intro. I had been managing it for about 4 years. I had been maybe 5 years. I had been with the company about 6 years, and 5 of which I was this senior manager. And that job was pivotal to me becoming able to coach, because I had to learn how to connect with, interact with, and motivate so many types of personalities. And especially if anyone listening to this has ever worked in the nightlife or service industry, you know that they're very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very eccentric personalities usually too. And so I had to find ways to really connect with all sorts of people: security guards, EMTs, and like health professionals on site, bartenders, waitresses, owners of the business, other like the GM, the fire marshal. Like there's such a variety. The artists backstage, there was a variety of needs that had to be met, and I had to figure out how to do this. And so I had to overcome this fear of yeah, I guess you could say just being in the spotlight. I had to own this position of needing to delegate and connect with all of these different people and do it confidently and powerfully. And yeah, that was a huge thing that allowed me to then learn how to better coach, better connect with people, and also own kind of a little bit more about who I was, or at least what I wanted to be.
So today, thanks to your practice as a holistic coach, you help people understanding who they could become. So I want to ask you, as it seems quite a powerful question, what would you say to someone wondering in their mind, who could I become?
Mm. What would I say to someone who is wondering, who could I become? Um, I would say dream as big as you can dream and act as small as you can act.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times we get stuck and we create these visions for ourselves of all these things we want to do and who we could be and how we could be as a person and what we could be doing for a career and relationship and all this stuff that like we think so big that we think we have to take unbelievably big steps. And so most of the time people go, I could never do that. There's no way I could ever get there. I'm not even going to try. And so I think dreaming as big as you can dream and acting as small as you can act, it disarms that. It makes it a lot more attainable. You start to feel the momentum of moving towards something. And if there's anything I've learned through like my personal research and my degrees in psychology and learning more about neuropsychology and the chemical components of like dopamine and how that actually works in our seeking of pleasure, let's say, there's more motivation that happens along the path than at the result. And that's like proven now through science. And so just acting small so you can get moving. That's what I would say to anyone considering that as dream huge and then just take tiny actions. So you can prove to yourself that you can believe in the path. Yeah.
So, what are the biggest challenges that people face when they have to find themselves, if there is such a thing?
The biggest challenges they face when they have to find themselves. I mean, I'm going to probably rely on some of the bigger, more well-known psychologists and people of the last 100+ years. And someone like Carl Jung comes to mind immediately of, well, there's plenty. Jordan Peterson is like contemporarily a really important person in this world, but Carl Jung and Carl Rogers. And I don't think there is ever a point where you find yourself. I don't think they didn't think that either. But you find your path, and you continuously find and refine. That sounds like a tongue twister. You find, you discover, and you refine the path itself, and that's what I would say is the closest you get to actually ever finding yourself first. And then the challenges that show up there are listening more to external than internal. That's the biggest challenge, I think, for anyone looking to find themselves or better find themselves. Going in is the only way forward for you to discover really what it is that you want to do and that makes you tick and that makes you excited and gets you up in the morning. Like you have to go in, and I think the challenge is feeling uncomfortable about that, and sitting with it and carving out time for you to reflect and ask yourself the questions, all these wonderful questions that you are asking me, right? Like if anyone listening can hear these and ask themselves these questions, that's the way, and it's also the challenge.
Well, that's a great answer, and I don't think I ever heard it before. But yeah, you don't find really yourself, but you find your path. I really like that. And I think it can really resonate well with the career changers.
Awesome. I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're also working with young men, and you're empowering them to move from insecurity, self-doubt, and loss of direction. So what has been your inspiration for this type of work?
See, again, another beautiful question. My inspiration has been my own life experience. I think, if I could be so bold to say that, I mean, I got into health and wellness first, long before coaching, because I was a seriously overweight, obese child. I was constantly bullied. I changed bus routes to avoid bullies. I had to change team sports. I couldn't play on certain teams because I was too heavy to play with kids my own age. Parents were worried I'd injure them. Things like that happened and sent me down a pretty dark spiral of disordered eating and body image issues. And over time and trial and error and experience and learning things, that definitely the hard way, I learned how to do what was best for me and not what was best for other people or their views of myself. And I think the first actions I took were, people think I'm this, they think I'm fat, they think I'm whatever. How do I not be that as fast as possible? And over time, I realized that's not a winning solution. It's very temporary. And so, yeah, I think that's just like a small glimpse into many of the weird things that have happened in my life that inspired me to help other men, but specifically young men. But I work with men really up into their like late 30s, early 40s, but primarily with young men that are trying to figure out who they are for themselves. That's totally separate of who they are seen as by the world. That's a big inspiration, because I think, especially I think in today's sort of social climate, masculinity is it's a very controversial area, and I think there's a lot of pressure put on men. And so I try to help men see that there are ways to embrace being masculine, and do it in a way that supports their communities and themselves, instead of being, let's say, being unsupportive. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers. Yeah, I pull from my own experiences. I think really that's the inspiration.
Yeah, I do really like to hear about the about a journey that man has to do. Usually, when we talk about these experiences, for some reason, um, there is never men are never mentioned in some ways. Um, we did have some stories, that they put an accent on men, how they live their feelings, and I really feel that there is not enough out there yet. There is still these ideas you were mentioning, about masculinity, and so I think that the job you're doing is incredible,
Thank you.
and definitely there is a need of more than that.
Thank
So
you.
through your work, what changes can you see young men lives?
Oh, so much. It's amazing. I mean, I've had clients, things as small as changing their diet so that they can own their bodies and not feel like they're victims of impulse, and um learning how to play a musical instrument so that they could participate in like music communities and be a part of something bigger than themselves. And um people that feel trapped inside jobs that, even if they've only had them for a few years, there's at such a young age, being a man, it's this, there sometimes is this pressure to really like be this providing, this like really stable, sturdy, sort of cold or hardened personality. And so I've worked with people to like learn that they can embrace things that are a lot lighter, and feel a lot more like themselves, and change jobs when they feel like it doesn't serve who they want to become. Right. So I think a lot of it comes back to that. And I think that's really the centerpiece of a lot of the work, especially with young men, is, you know, inviting people to explore who you could become and creating that vision as like a target. And then asking yourself daily, like, what am I doing today that person would do? That person I could become, what am I doing that they would do? What could I be doing that they could do? How could I be acting? Who could I be? How can I show up for myself in the way that person would? It's amazing to see what like people I've worked with have been able to achieve, and it's just it makes it all worthwhile.
You created a fail-proof method for beginning anything called the gap, if that's correct.
Mhm.
I don't know anything about it, and I'm really curious. So can you tell me, how does it work?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for asking. So the GAP stands for gradual action practice or process. I've kind of, it's gone through some iteration, which I think is part of the whole thing. Gradual action practice. Each letter is really important to kind of what I was talking about before. Right, dream as dream as big as you can dream and act as small as you can act. The gap is a methodology to do that. Gradual, right? Gradual meaning the smallest, most incremental, slowest path possible. How could you, okay, cool. I have to apply for grad school. Okay, cool. What do you have to do to apply for grad school? Right. And you go chunk it down as small as possible to the very smallest action you could take. Right. And then there's the second word, action. So there needs to be a movement, effort, something implemented, something in the direction of what you want to do, and practice, repetition. So I think if people utilize these kinds of things, it takes this crazy large task, whatever you want to do, whether it's like going for a new job, starting a new project, starting a weight loss program, starting a weight gain program, changing your nutrition. It doesn't matter. I think it's a really universal approach that like the smallest thing forward that you can take and continue to repeat and practice, it works as long as you are being really honest with yourself.
Well, it seems it worked because I feel very motivated now.
Oh, I love it.
I didn't have a great day, but now I feel great. Yes, I can do it. So can you share with us some interesting or funny stories from your multiple careers?
Oh, I don't know how long this podcast goes, but I could talk for a couple hours about some crazy stuff.
Well, maybe we keep it for another one, but one funny.
Oh man, funny, interesting stories. I mean, the highlight. Well, okay. There's two things that really host the most interesting stories in my life. And it's funny, I didn't even talk about this as a part of the career because quite honestly, I didn't really get paid much. And so I think when we talk about career, we talk about getting paid for things, but sometimes I think career is just it's effort in line with what you want to be spending your time doing, I think also. And so like I brushed over this, but I started playing drums when I was 14, and I have been in bands that have traveled and toured since then. And some of the craziest stories come from those experiences of being in the middle of nowhere, like, showing up to a small shed in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, and playing for basically a group of like 8 people that live, miles apart because there's nothing but cornfields. Things like that are crazy. And those are like I wouldn't say the low points, but the weird ones. And then there's like the high points of going to flying to Europe and playing like a monster huge festival in Belgium and seeing 2,500 people watch you play when you were like, how does anyone know we exist? And singing words back to you that you wrote. That's a crazy experience. Those are like some of the really fun, really amazing ones that I personally got to experience, but also the stories from running the music venue are just crazy. Like, before all of the wild front page news stuff that happened with Bill Cosby, Bill Cosby did a stand-up tour at the venue that I managed, and there was no one else there when he showed up. He got dropped off by a cab in the back of the music venue, and I walked him in, and he was tired, and so he asked me to set him up on the couch so we could take a nap, and I ran out and got a cappuccino, and I was like, what the hell is happening right now? Bill, I just like put a blanket over Bill Cosby so he could take a nap. This is crazy. Things like that. And just all of the amazing artists that I got to see. Got to like sing Wagon Wheel with Jeff Bridges backstage, and share some fish and chips with Ed Sheeran, and like just crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's great. think this is a great episode. Thank you.
I'm glad. Thank you for hosting it. I appreciate it.
um, so, what life or transferable skills have you learned from your different jobs? We always talk about transferable skills and the career
Yeah.
changes when moving from one career to the other.
I love that question. I love that question. It kind of ties in all the things we're talking about, especially the beginning of like, everything that you do serves a purpose if you can extract the useful stuff. And so, yeah, what transferable skills? I mean, this is it. I think, my, my girlfriend always says this, and like some of my clients will say it. And I never really, it took me a long time to accept it without feeling like it was sounding boastful or whatever. But I think like one of the things that I'm really great at, that and I'm great at it as a result of extracting all of those transferable skills, is being able to connect with people. And I think it comes from all of that stuff, touring as a musician, and having to talk to a concert promoter, while an hour later I had to talk to the guy that was fixing our van because our tire exploded. And those are two very different types of people. And to learn how to connect with them both within the same day, so that you can both walk away having had a good experience and hopefully gain something from it. And that's just like one example, but I think it's all these jobs, all of these jobs taught me how to better connect with people, and to really like value the person and be curious about what makes them unique and special. And that's it. Yeah, the skills of connection, I think. Yeah, that would be the big umbrella.
Mm. So, well, we are approaching the end of our episode. So we have a few questions, quite deep. So the
I'll
first
try to keep
one,
them short.
yeah. What type of advice would you give to anyone, that is to anyone along their path to self-realization?
Ah, that's great. To anyone along their path of self-realization, I would say, I mean, it's so cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, because it's so powerful. It's just one step at a time. It is literally one step. It is, can I conquer today? Can I conquer the hour? Can I put one foot in front of the other? And if I can't take a full step today, can I take a half step? Um, that's it. It's, I think, even just the phrase path to self-realization is so crucial, right? Because like we said before, you never find yourself, you never get realized, you never get fully actualized. You can aim to get as close as you can. And that's actually the beauty of life. Like when you let go of this need to like hit the end zone and like get there, the journey becomes a lot better.
And what advice would you give to someone looking to change their career?
The first thing I would ask them is, what can you find about your career right now that you can love and appreciate? And it's not what people would expect, I think, most often. But it's uh, moving on from something out of resentment, anger, frustration, being bored. Um, it's just going to show up again. It's going to show up again. There's no grass is greener. Ultimately, there's no big rainbow. And so I think, are there better options for you? Are there ways you want to go that could bring you closer to this person who you want to become? Definitely. And I think you could chase it. But before you do that, find what you can appreciate about your current position, your current role, your current lack of a role, and appreciate that. And then once you can appreciate that, then acknowledge, right? Do I still want to move forward and do something else? Yes. I think that's step one. And then after that, I think it's just thinking about this intersection of what kind of skills do I have? What can I do fairly well? And what do I enjoy doing? Like, I think the idea of like chasing a passion is overrated. I think you need to be able to do it repeatedly. And passion, there's so much pressure to stay inspired and so energized. And like, that's just not human nature. So it's like, you need to counter that with like, what can I repeatedly do? What am I pretty good at? I think that's a really good place to start looking.
So really now the last question, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to a younger self, to your younger self?
I would say the goofy advice would be, hey man, you don't need to drink as many beers. That's the goofy advice. The real advice is I think it's the same advice I gave to anyone on the path of self-realization. It's just 1 foot. Don't, I often give this analogy to my clients. Like, I think about like Michael Phelps, or like the most decorated Olympian of all time. And like, you watch him swim, watch any exceptional athlete, but especially like Michael Phelps swimming. He doesn't swim with his head up staring at the wall of where he's going. He picks his head up. There's a very quick glance at where he's going, and the head goes back underwater, and he's swimming, and his arms, the face is down in the water. If you're constantly staring at this like target, this goal, it's overwhelming. It can like paralyze you by analysis, and instead glance at it and then act in just what you can do right in front of you. I would say that to my younger self, like, hey man, just start moving. Just start moving. Think about where you want to go. Think about what's probably the best way to go there, and then just take a couple steps and then assess.
Well, thank you, Eric, for joining us today and sharing your inspirational career change story, and also for giving us a glimpse of who we could become. I really enjoyed this episode. I actually feel very inspired.
Thank you.
A last message for our listeners: don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.